Fractional Frequency, our take on talent, people trends, and the reality of building up businesses in an economy that keeps rewriting the rules. I'm Amy Crook, founder of Strativus.
And I'm Erin Totis, Managing Director of Talent Delivery, which basically means I live in the universe of finding the right people to make an impact for our clients fast.
Around here, we talk about the real side of HR and talent, what works, what absolutely doesn't, and how to build teams that can carry a business, not drag it down.
We'll break down trends, share the behind the scenes of scaling a consultancy from zero, and probably overshare a little because that's where the good lessons live.
So whether you're building, hiring, leading, or just trying to keep your company profitable, you're in the right place.
This is Fractional Frequency. Let's get to it.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yes, me too, because tonight we are joined by someone who has honestly had such a huge impact on my career. They were the person who showed me how to lead with my whole heart, and also gave me everything I needed to not only be successful in my work product, but to make sure that those around me felt really good about it. And so I would like to introduce Jacob Little.
Hello, Erin. Hello, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. And tell us, Jacob, how do you and Amy know each other?
Yeah, so let me set the stage for you. I had just joined Glassdoor about a year prior in late 2019, leading the L&D team, and I inherited a team of two people. A year later, almost the entire recruiting team resigned, and the chief people officer gave me the team and basically said, rebuild the team and lead recruiting now. And I had no idea what I was doing. I barely even hired somebody, much less led a recruiting team. And the great resignation starts at the same time. So it was a super fun time for me. And I urgently needed to hire somebody who knew what they were doing. And Amy, you were that person. And the best decision I ever made at Glassdoor. So Amy came onto the team and really quickly fixed the broken process, hired a kick-ass team reporting to her, and started exceeding every metric and goal that I gave her. So Amy, I'm so proud of you and so honored to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a crazy time. It really was, because every other week it seemed like we were getting memos we're increasing the hiring for this team by 70%. It's really, for when? Well, we want to do it in the next quarter. Oh, great. But it was a lot of fun, and it was honestly the best time. I look back on that year, and as crazy as it was, it was my favorite time at Glassdoor for sure. So what have
Yeah,
you
it was one
been?
of those times where the right people were doing really meaningful work at the right
Yes,
time.
yes,
And we all just bonded so well.
yes, that's so true. Yeah, everybody was just kicking ass. We were just, it was so great. It was so great. What have you been focused on lately?
I I typically find an element of transformation in whatever role that I'm in. So we'll talk about what transformation looked like at Glassdoor.
Mhm.
Lately, I've been really interested in how AI is transforming the workplace and the
Mhm.
people function. So I really want to have a voice in the topic. And so I went back to school. I went to Berkeley and got a graduate certification in artificial intelligence and learned
Nice.
how to make organizations ready for artificial intelligence and kind of the human mindset and behavior change that's required to start taking advantage of what AI can do for businesses. So that's something I'm thinking a lot about lately, and something that's actually changing what leadership looks like as well. So maybe we can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, no. So I feel like with AI, I'm gonna say this the wrong way, but I think a lot of organizations put the cart before the horse. And it's like only now are they truly like investigating impact and like what success metrics are applicable to how you implement AI. So I think it's awesome the more people can educate themselves around what the capabilities truly are, what the ethical impacts are, and how it does change the structure of your organization. So it's super cool that you're doing that. And yeah, so Erin and I talked about making a podcast around, great leadership. And and so when we talked about authentic leadership, I thought about you. And so we're really happy to have you here. And I'm just going to kick it over to Erin to ask a few of the questions that came up for us when we were thinking about this topic.
And of course, the first question that I think we may have even said at the same time was, what does that actually mean? The authentic leadership gets thrown around a lot, but Jacob, maybe tell us a little bit about that. What does it actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I think for me, authentic leadership is when somebody knows who they are
Mm,
and who they say they are shows up in their actions and decisions,
mm,
especially when those actions or decisions are inconvenient. That's when character and principle are really tested in those moments where it's inconvenient to stay true to yourself.
mm,
So for me, what that meant practically was leading with my story and helping people understand the why behind I do what I do.
mhm,
It's really important to me, and it has been my whole career, that my work is a reflection of my values and who I am.
mhm,
And so when I share my story and what drives me, I think it helps people think about their story and what they're passionate about and helps them plug in their story to a larger vision.
mhm,
To add a little context to my story, I was raised in a really sort of fundamentalist religious missionary family, and I spent most of my life kind of moving around to different places in the world, Russia and Europe and back to the US, and layer into that the experience of being a closeted queer kid, where coming out meant ostracism from my family, being expelled from my schools, being fired from my first job.
mm,
And so when I finally had the space to be my authentic self in the workplace, I really felt the difference that it made for me. And I have a passion for creating spaces of psychological safety and belonging for those behind me so they don't have to experience what I did. And
mm.
so that part of my story lends itself really well to a people and a people experience role, because at its core, we're creating the conditions for people to be their best selves in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that has a direct impact on the levels of engagement and the contributions and the output they make, and the
Mm.
business benefits from that. So that was my why, and it helped people connect their why to what we were doing and build a sense of camaraderie and vision.
And I love, uh, we've talked quite a bit about leading with your story and your vulnerability, but we've also talked about creating space for others to shine, and particularly for
Yeah.
those who are within your organization. Talk to us a little bit about that. What does that actually look like as a leader?
Yeah. Well, to go back to the story of hiring Amy, I was very transparent with everybody that I did not know a lot about recruiting. I was very much on a learning curve.
Yeah.
And so when I hired Amy, she was very clearly the smartest person in the room when it came to talent acquisition.
Only
And
on
for
that
me to
one subject.
pretend you are an expert in your craft, Amy. And so for me to pretend that I should know more about recruiting than Amy because she's reporting to me, that would not have been an authentic way for me to show up. And so, Amy, I really looked for ways to make you shine, to
Hmm.
showcase your TA expertise, because I needed you to, and it was a good reflection on me as a leader that I could bring in somebody of your caliber to lead the function. So it was really easy for me to give you time to shine, to create opportunities for you to share your work. to demonstrate my confidence in you so
Mhm.
that that could be emulated by the business leaders that you supported.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see you shine and then to pass that along to your team.
Yeah. It was great. It works so well. And honestly, um, it was so refreshing to have a leader who was comfortable enough and grounded enough in what they brought to the table that they weren't trying to um, take take my work and repackage it or because that happens in workplaces. When
Yeah.
you're reporting up to somebody and they ask you to put something together, but you get the little message that like, oh, this really needs to come from me, and you're like, okay, that's fine. Um, and so it was like a whole new world, like reporting into you because you were like, okay, this is the problem statement. I know you're going to work through it. And so this is who we'll be meeting with to kind of talk through it. And that was really awesome because you got me a seat at the
Mhm.
table and you got me in front of people that would, later on have a big say in if I got a promotion or not. And because they had witnessed me in person and they knew me and I wasn't just a name on a document. They advocated for me, and so, but no one as strongly as you, which is awesome. But but yeah, I definitely felt that. I definitely felt that you were creating the space and giving me the room um and trusting me to make the right call. And so it just made a huge difference because then I felt like I could spread my wings a little bit and I wasn't confined to my virtual cubicle of outputs. So yeah, I can definitely attest to Jacob's skill there for sure.
And I think it takes quite a bit of courage to show up with vulnerability as a leader and maybe in a different way than it is to show up with vulnerability as an individual contributor. And
Mhm.
so maybe we can spend a little bit of time on that. Jacob,
Yeah.
what changes when you move from, maybe senior or manager level up to leadership in leading with vulnerability?
Yeah. I think sometimes people conflate being vulnerable with being open.
Mm.
And it's a very different thing. Openness is sort of the willingness to tell your story, and vulnerability is the willingness to let others be a part of it. And that's the
Mhm.
job of a leader, is to enlist people in a shared vision to help them see themselves in the vision and their contribution. And vulnerability costs something. I can be open until the cows come home, but I'm not being vulnerable until it really feels risky, that
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
that I'm that I'm getting it going out on a ledge. And so, I think vulnerable people can admit to a mistake, but
Mm.
that's not enough if you're a leader. A vulnerable leader admits to a mistake and takes it to the next level by sharing what they learned.
Mhm.
A vulnerable person can ask for help, but a vulnerable leader can ask for help and then commit to learning what you need help with.
Mm.
A vulnerable person shows emotion, but a vulnerable leader can't just show emotion. They have to practice self awareness to be conscientious of how that comes across to the team and the impact it can have. Because as the leader, your mood controls the weather for everyone else
Oh, yes.
downstream. A
Yeah.
vulnerable person can say, I don't know, but a vulnerable leader has to say, I don't know, but I have an idea or a plan to figure it out.
Mhm.
And a vulnerable person can talk about personal challenges or struggles, but a vulnerable leader talks about those for the purpose of connecting, of creating trust, of building empathy and relatability. It's not a therapy session.
Yes. Yeah.
I love your bit about your mood sort of dictates the weather. And
Yeah.
maybe like, what does that feel like? It sounds like you've definitely had times where maybe you've felt one way, but you've had to show up a little bit differently in front of your team in just being conscious of that. What does
Yeah.
that feel like on the inside as a leader?
Well, I think as a leader, whenever you show emotion, I ask myself, to what end? What's my goal by showing this emotion? And
Mm,
if I have a constructive goal, whether it's to build a connection, to show somebody, to let my guard down and show somebody that I'm human too, or to empathize with something they're going through, or to give constructive feedback.
mm,
Emotion expressed as a leader has to have a goal, a constructive goal. If it doesn't have a constructive goal, keep it to yourself. Vulnerability is not about sharing everything that you're going through.
Mm.
It has to have a goal.
That makes a ton of sense. And I feel like, as I think about leaders that I've worked with or under in the past, some I think are good at this and are really authentic, and others really struggle to show up authentically. And so I'm curious for your perspective about whether that's learned or innate. Can people learn how to be an authentic leader?
One of my favorite television stars, Mama RuPaul, the host of RuPaul's Drag Race,
Yes,
says that we're all born naked and the rest is drag.
mm.
love that.
So let me reach and apply it to this scenario. I think we're all born our authentic self. As a child, there is no filter, there is no pretense, there is no mask. We are authentically ourselves. And anyone who has had kids, and Erin, maybe you can vouch for this, they come out of the womb with a little personality.
Hmm. They sure
Um,
do.
and I have often heard it said that the task of our adult lives is to rediscover the authenticity that we had as a child. So, yes, I believe authenticity can be learned. I believe we're born authentic and we actually learn not to be authentic through the traumas and challenges that life throws at us.
Mm.
And if you want to rediscover your authenticity, there's a couple elements to it that are hard work to cultivate. To be authentic, you have to be self aware. You have to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, how you impact others.
Mm.
You have to have relational transparency, being honest and open, being genuine in how you communicate, being like really understanding who you are and showing up as that person rather than acting out a role. Empathy is a crucial skill.
Mhm.
And that means cultivating and gathering and factoring in other viewpoints aside from your own when making decisions. There's you have to have a sort of moral perspective and philosophy that guides your decisions and behaviors, particularly in difficult situations. And then consistency in aligning your actions with your core values.
Mhm.
When you are known as an authentic leader, that is a responsibility. And you have to be consistent when people are watching and when people aren't watching. There's
Mhm.
no off ramp because
Mm.
Yeah,
it compromises your authenticity if you take a break from it.
100%. Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense. What would you say, how do you check in with yourself around your own authenticity, Jacob, as you're sort of operating in a leadership role? A lot of times you can get swept up in the work. What are some
Yeah.
tactics that you use to check in and just, kind of pressure test if you're showing up in the way that you aspire to?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world and we operate in a society and a business world that sometimes makes it seem like we have to compromise on our values or our principles.
Mm.
And it can be really hard to navigate that, particularly as you get higher in an organization and you have to align with company direction sometimes. You have to be the voice of the company. And
Yeah.
sometimes that comes at the expense of your own voice. Um, and so for me, try I try to really pause and just like center myself on what is what is the situation? What is my authentic values driven take on it? How do I frame it in a way that's true to me and will resonate with my audience? Um, I heard a quote once that really stuck with me and it said, the difference between hope and despair is learning how to tell a different story with the same facts.
Mm.
Mm.
So, how can I take the facts of whatever is happening and tell a story using those facts, being true to them,
Mm-hmm.
but in a way that's true to me as well and true to my values? I think there are tough decisions to be made in life and in business
Mm-hmm.
uh, where it's important to stand on principles, and to not do so would risk compromising who you are. And so to me, that speaks to the importance of really working at a company that aligns with your personal values and doing work that's a reflection of what's important to you. And that's always what I've tried to cultivate in my career, is doing work that connects to who I am and the story and the legacy that I want to leave.
I think that's
I,
awesome. Sorry, Erin.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Go ahead, though.
I love that the reframing piece because that is so critical. You know, the facts are the facts, but how you share the message
Hmm.
can be different. And just to go back to what you said earlier around when you're in a leadership position, you set the weather. And so you know, it's like pick your path. Like you want to keep it as calm as possible. Um, Creating mass hysteria has never gotten any team into a good spot.
No.
So it's it's so important to have that skill of, you know, staying true to the facts and thinking about that delivery, thinking about that framing so that you haven't you know, made the weather a category 5 hurricane, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's raining, but like we don't need to make it worse. And I think that's um a really important skill for leaders to have in the communication, you know, knowing how to frame something even if it's not good news.
Yeah. I think there's an aspect to leadership where you're sort of um, the bulwark against the storm to some extent, where you take whatever beating is coming,
Mm-hmm.
soften it, find the parts that are most important to
Yeah.
deliver to the team, and do it in a way that, to the best of your ability, maintains connection and engagement and allows people to chart a path forward and still do their best work. That does not mean just letting the storm directly through. You have to filter it and lead the team through that in a way that's true to you.
Yeah. And a lot of that work is no one ever sees it
Yeah.
because,
Yep.
you know, you're in the meeting getting the battering and then
Yep.
you're privately working through it. And then what comes out the other side is so different and no one ever knows.
Yep. Yeah, that's why they say leadership is lonely, because
Yeah.
there are things you don't and can't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I think so much of great leaders is sort of buffering the team from the hardest things, but also leading them through change. And change is hard for, I think, most humans, maybe all humans.
Yeah.
And we were talking about some of the changes just in the world and in the market. Jacob, earlier you mentioned AI, and we can't
Yeah.
have a podcast episode without talking about that just a little bit. So,
Not in
um,
2026, we cannot.
no,
Yeah.
but it feels natural to chat on it just a little bit. And so, as you think about what's required of a great leader, how is AI changing that?
I think I think AI puts a premium on great leadership
Mm,
because it raises the bar on the importance of distinctly human traits, those that cannot be replicated or delegated
mhm,
to an LLM.
mhm,
And AI can automate the what. It can do amazing things in the workplace. It can take over certain processes, and agents can do all kinds of work, but it can't automate the why.
mhm,
The why still has to come from authentic leaders. Teams and teamwork will still exist the the form and function may be different, but they will still require leaders, and those leaders will have to understand why. They will have to cut through all the AI slop and the noise to create meaning. They have to have critical thinking skills
Mm.
to assess, to assess accuracy of AI produced work. And Amy, you mentioned this earlier. AI requires really robust ethical and moral judgment,
Yeah.
which is a key element of authentic leadership, because authentic leaders know who they are and what they stand for and can make principled decisions even at personal cost and risk.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I worry about a world where authentic leadership isn't valued and we stop taking those principled stands, and then we find ourselves in a future that we don't want to be in.
Yeah, I mean it could go either way. But I feel encouraged by conversations that I'm having with leaders now. They're a lot different to what they were maybe 12, 18 months ago, where it
Mm,
was, the big plan is basically get rid of as many people as you can and let's automate everything. And
yeah.
the reality of that is not a great product, not a great
Yeah.
experience. And people are having to walk it back a little bit and think, okay,
Yep.
what actually makes sense, because I do need to find the balance. And when my product service
Hmm.
experience is hitting a human, how do I make sure that I've thought through a new process that makes sense and doesn't compromise those product services and experiences and still gets the most out of automation? Rather
Yep.
than just like trying to jam this like new technology into old processes and being like, oh, why is it not working? And
Yeah.
so I'm encouraged now that the the panic of like we must implement AI like everywhere immediately, which was coming from the top. And I saw a funny meme actually on LinkedIn the other day, and it was like it said CEOs in the one column, but it could be anybody. But it was like the people are like, "What do you want?" And the CEOs are like, "AI," and it's like, "Where do you want it?" And it's like, "We don't know." And it's like
Yeah, I
so
mean,
true.
it's shocking how many businesses don't start their AI journey with a defined use case, first of all.
Right, right.
But let me give you two really clear examples of companies like getting ahead of their skis on AI. One
Hmm.
example is Duolingo. And it was a year or two ago, the CEO sent out an email to the entire company
Hmm.
that essentially said, "We are an AI first company. From now on, everything you do should be powered by AI. Hiring is frozen. We are going to get the most out of this technology as possible."
Hmm.
Um, Guess how that was received by employees? Mass revolt. The CEO, it went viral. The CEO had to apologize. And employees said, "We are not an AI first company. We are a people first company. Thank you very much." And
Yeah.
the CEO backtracked.
Yeah.
Um, the second example I'll share is Klarna.
Oh,
They
yeah.
fired most of their customer support team
Yep.
and thought they could replicate that with AI. Turns out customer satisfaction went way down. They rehired the whole team. Um,
I didn't know
so
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was a mess. And I've seen that in other organizations in various degrees. And yeah, you're so right. Like start with your use case, start with some education, like
yeah,
understand what the capabilities are. I, like you, also went and did some post-grad learning, but I did mine through MIT. And
Casual name drop there. Good job.
and and it was fascinating. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that like I understood all of the modules on robotics because that was insane. But the machine learning, the AI stuff, it was really eye-opening in terms of like capability and how to most effectively um weave it into your organization
Mhm.
while still keeping the integrity of what you're trying to do. And I think everyone just lost track of that. Like they lost track of the goal, whether, like I said, product, service, experience. It was just about implementing the tool. It wasn't a well thought out, okay, this is what we're hoping to achieve, and so does this make sense? Combined with the fact that overnight there were 50 billion companies that were saying that they had the AI solution that was going to do literally everything that you need, um, which were, not this wasn't true. The capabilities when you actually went to implement weren't quite there yet. Um, and when you're dealing with a population, particularly in HR, who are not technical, it's easy to get misled by like
Mhm.
organizations that are saying that their tool has certain capabilities that then turns out not to be true. So
Yeah.
I say all that to say I do feel encouraged that people are now starting to take a look at more of a strategic approach to implementing it that won't compromise that experience. And like you said, it makes um, people's inherent skills like critical thinking and being authentic and being able to connect with the market that you are trying to reach so much more valuable and so much more important. Um, and I hope that we pick the lighter path as we move forward with how technology is advancing, and that we hopefully learn some
Yeah.
lessons, and that we don't, repeat the same mistakes. And because I don't know how that would be long term. It would
Yeah.
be pretty
I think
scary.
we have to crawl before we can walk, before we can run.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I'll say on this is that I think that HR organizations should be leading AI deployment
Yes.
within their organizations because it is not as much as IT would like you to believe it, it's not a technical implementation. It is
No.
a organizational change management exercise that requires mindset shift, behavior change, leadership skills, and moral and ethical judgment. And I
Yeah.
think HR is the right function to lead that work. And
Yeah.
so the more business leaders can empower and build capability on their people teams to have
Mhm.
a strong voice at the AI table, the better. But
Yeah.
that does require, Amy, to your point, a level of technical fluency
Yes. You have to do the
on
education.
the HR team so
Yeah.
you can have a credible voice,
Yeah.
an authentic voice at the table that's taken seriously. So I'm so glad you went to MIT and you're building that capability. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I loved it. It was fascinating. And I got to actually implement a ton of it back when I was at Glassdoor. Like we rolled out three different tools to help automate the, pieces of the recruitment process, so that we could, flex up with our bandwidth as we needed to. And, rather than having to increase the team, we could increase our capacity without compromising the experience. And that was always top of mind for me because well, Jacob, it's really important to me that people go through their introduction to an organization and feel great about it, feel excited about it, feel connected
Yep.
to it. And I never wanted to lose that. And the great news is you don't have to. You just have to really think through where it's going to be most beneficial.
Yeah. And if you can free up time for your recruiters to provide that differentiated candidate
Hmm.
and new employee experience and not spend all that time reviewing unqualified resumes, that is a good use case.
Hmm. Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the reality of being truly authentic. Were there moments in your career, Jacob, where being authentic felt risky?
Yes. There have been many moments where I experienced a pounding heart about to say something vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, I mentioned earlier that for me, authentic leadership looks like leading with my story because it really defines my why and helps people understand how I connect my why to my work.
Mhm.
And so, some people think coming out is a one-time thing, like, oh, I'm out of the closet now, and the rest of my life I'm out. But I'm here to tell you that coming out is an almost daily process. And every time you come out, it requires emotional labor and vulnerability. And you're never sure how it's going to be received and how it will make people think of you.
Mhm.
But at this point, my identity as a queer person is such a big part of how I show up at work and in life,
Mhm.
that it's something I do all the time and it feels vulnerable and scary every time.
Mhm.
I mentioned how my story, my experience as a queer person and, being afraid to come out and it being really risky to come out has
Mhm.
really informed my work as a people leader. And with that comes a non-negotiable commitment to creating fair, inclusive workplaces
Mhm.
with belonging as a core value.
Yeah.
And as you know, Amy, a lot of people processes are not set up to create fairness and consistency.
Mhm.
And as we look at the demographics of CEOs and C-suite,
Mhm.
um, there are huge gaps in representation that do not reflect the talent and capabilities of all kinds of marginalized groups.
Mhm.
And so at Glassdoor, I was non-negotiably committed to redesigning talent processes from recruiting to internal mobility to promotions to performance management
Mhm.
to do the best we could to create a consistent, fair experience for everyone.
Yeah.
And that meant huge behavior changes across the organization. It was its own transformation effort. And so when you tell a leader who's used to bringing in people that they've worked with in the past, just
Right.
because they know they work well together,
Mhm.
or when leaders just tap their favorites on their team for promotion without an objective assessment of skills,
Mhm.
it's really hard for those leaders to give up that privilege and to change their behaviors. And so I was constantly um, feeling like I constantly felt risky to hold the line on these processes, but I had no choice because it was such a core value of mine
Yeah.
to to run objective, fair processes. But when leaders understood that it's not HR's job to follow orders, it's
Yeah.
HR's job to be stewards of a fair and objective and consistent process,
Yeah.
I think over time they got it.
Oh, they
And
definitely did.
our recruiting metrics showed, I think we went from
Hmm.
hiring 10% marginalized groups to 30 to 35% consistently quarter over quarter.
That's right.
So the processes we designed worked, and Amy, you and your team executed them incredibly well. But getting there was a huge mindset shift and required lots of principled leadership and and behavior change.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I think one of the first conversations that I had when we were implementing the candidate pool rule to make sure that we were being really thoughtful
Mhm.
about candidates was um, a leader being like, I'm not asking a lot. Like I'm fine with like anyone. I just need them to have had like this amount of experience in top tech company, and they need to have gone to a top tier school, and they need to live in the Bay Area. And I was like, okay.
That narrows it down a bit. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a conversation. But yeah, everybody, it was so great to see you though, like bring everybody along on that journey. And yeah, the impact that it made to the
Yeah. I think,
significant.
thanks, Amy. I think that gets to how authenticity looks a little bit different at different levels in the organization.
Hmm.
So for me, when I was trying to facilitate this change at Glassdoor, I was, senior director,
Hmm.
relatively influential and visible across the company.
Hmm.
And for me to take those stands and to sometimes go against what much more senior leaders wanted, that was me risking power and influence.
Hmm.
Because if leaders above me say, we don't like what Jacob's putting down here, he doesn't, we don't want him in this position of power and influence. They could have demoted me or fired me or shut me out. But I had a leader who shielded me from that and who consistently elevated me and put me in the room
Yeah.
so that my authentic voice could actually create behavior change. But without her, uh, I was risking my own power and influence because I was bringing a change to the organization that not everybody wanted.
Yeah.
When you're earlier in your career, being authentic, I think, risks belonging because there's always the chance that the culture of the organization doesn't value uniqueness or difference and that there's a conformity culture. So when you're early in your career, you risk belonging. When
Yeah.
you're more senior in your career, you risk power and influence.
Yeah, no, that's so true. As you move up, the stakes definitely do get higher.
Yeah.
Um, so as a, pretty what you see is what you get kind of person generally, where's the line between authenticity and oversharing? I'm just asking for a friend.
Same. I mean, I have definitely crossed the line from authenticity into oversharing. That's when you get those like vulnerability hangovers the next day where you're like, oh, I spoke too much. Um, I think it's important to remember though that authenticity is discipline. It's not relaxing and just letting it all come out. It's
Yeah.
discipline. It's congruence between your inside and your outside.
Hmm.
Um, and your ability to have healthy boundaries with yourself is definitely a part of being an authentic leader. So echoing what I said earlier, any anytime you share a feeling or anytime you're vulnerable as a leader, it has to be towards a constructive end.
Yeah.
And if it's not towards a constructive end, then it's oversharing, um, and there needs to be some boundary setting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what types of behaviors have you witnessed that have enabled authenticity in others? And then which ones do you think um, take away that opportunity for people to be authentic at work?
Yeah, I think earlier we talked about, letting others shine, not having to be the smartest person in the room. I
Hmm.
think I would add to that is really valuing difference, seeing difference as a driver of innovation, seeing difference as something that brings new and different ideas to the table.
Hmm.
Um, Along with that, there's this idea of celebrating experiments, even if they fail, because
Yeah.
you tried something new and different. That's how innovation happens, by
Yeah.
experimentation. Um, and I would say another enabler are those who create psychological safety, because that gives people signal and permission to bring their authentic selves to work, and it cascades throughout an organization.
Yeah.
Um, Detractors that I've seen in my career are conformity culture, where it's like fit in or get out.
Mm.
Um, I I've seen far too many leaders lead but through fear and shame
Mm,
rather than inspiration. And that will shut down vulnerability like nobody's business.
yeah.
I think also micromanaging
Mm,
it takes somebody away from feeling empowered,
yeah.
uh, and just makes them kind of take orders. So those would say are detractors.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And part of the work that we do at Stratovis is working with, new leaders who are finding their feet, making that uncomfy transition from IC to, a management position, leadership position. Um, I would love to hear from you, the lessons that you learned when you stepped into more senior roles.
Yeah. Amy, it's a bit ironic that, I hired you about a year into my senior leadership experience, and I felt like I learned so many lessons the hard way. And I sort of feel bad for some folks on the team who had to help me learn those lessons.
No, you're not
But
going to do that.
I've definitely made the mistake of oversharing, in a way that was not productive and kind of blurred the healthy boundaries between work and life.
Mm,
Um, I think one lesson I really learned at Glassdoor was, yes, I was known for being visionary and enlisting people in a shared vision and goal and creating psychological safety. I think I didn't quite realize the importance of following through on that vision with really solid operations and execution. And I just hadn't seen that modeled in my career.
mm,
So I really doubled down on balancing vision and inspiration with the operational chops, uh, and level of detail orientation to actually get the outcomes that we wanted. It's not just enough to be visionary. Um, Vision without a plan is just a daydream.
mm.
Mm.
Yeah. I feel
I
like
think
we did pretty good though, Jacob, to be honest. Like if that's how it felt, I wasn't in your seat, but I think we did pretty good. I felt like we had a pretty strong run.
we sure did. I mean, I think Amy, you knew a lot more about execution than I did at the time, so I credit you for teaching me about that.
No. Anything else that
Um,
kind of comes to mind?
yeah, I think a lot of queer people have a shared experience of, you have this secret when you're young and you're
Mm,
afraid to share it because it creates shame because you think it's
mm,
bad because of what society has taught you.
mm,
And so it creates this need to be liked, to be good enough, to be perfect, to be the best, to
mm,
be. And so, um, I think for me, there was this really intense desire to be likable, to be the fun boss, to
mm,
be and sometimes that came at the expense of being honest and delivering
mm.
constructive feedback
Yeah,
because I just wanted to be likable. And so unlearning, that I don't have to be nice all the time,
yeah.
Mm.
that I am good enough, uh, took a lot of effort. Yeah, something I'm still learning.
Wow.
Mm. Clear is kind.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, leaders are often expected to be polished and, deliver the company line in whatever circumstances. But I think, especially during times of change or when things are really hard, I think it's actually really powerful and important for leaders not to be polished
Yeah.
and to share in some of the pain or to share in some of the uncertainty or fear that's going on, and just using that emotion to empathize and identify with people who are feeling the same thing.
Hmm.
So if there's a really scary thing happening or lots of change, I would appreciate a leader who could like sit with me in that uncertainty and fear for a little bit versus a leader who shows up perfectly polished, saying exactly what they're supposed to say.
Yeah.
Mm.
It doesn't feel as authentic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Especially when your company's going, like you said, going through something significant, and when you're in a leadership position, you know more than they do.
Yeah.
And so pretending that everything's fine, I just think is so disingenuous, and
Yep.
it's a disservice to your team to make them think they're crazy when they can, clearly sense that there's something going on. And so,
Yeah.
you don't
Employees can smell dishonesty or inauthenticity a mile
they
away.
can,
You're
they
not fooling anybody.
no, and all it does is damage your credibility if you're the one
Yeah.
that's either pretending everything's fine or even worse, disappearing. That's just not, it just damages your credibility. It doesn't keep anything in secret or keep anything moving forward. It's your brand that's impacted. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
about some of
if,
those.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Jacob.
Erin. No, go ahead, please.
I was just, as you were talking, reflecting on those moments where there was really tough news to deliver in different environments. And there's such a contrast in my mind between, the highly polished marketing email that
Hmm.
hits your inbox versus the leader that pulls a round table of the team together to just say, hey, here's what I can share with you right now. And
Right.
Yeah.
here's, I'm here to support you and I'm here to answer questions as much as I can. And that feels so different. And it's a really,
Yeah.
in many ways, a small sort of change in strategy for a leader to
Yeah.
address that.
Yeah. I think you said something really important, Erin, which is it is not the job of an authentic leader to share everything they know with
Right.
their team. You
Mm.
can still filter and choose what is the most important for the team to hear and still be authentic. Being authentic does not mean sharing everything.
Right.
Right.
And you
Right.
can build trust without being a totally open book. I mean, that's part of your role,
Yeah.
of course, is
Yep.
to
Yep.
hold some things close. And for you, back to our chat about how leadership is sometimes sort of lonely. That's just built in. That's
Yeah.
part of the role.
Mm.
But
Yep.
trust is so critical in doing anything effectively with your team. And so, Jacob, how should authenticity show up in decision making for leaders?
Yeah. Um I think when making decisions, aligning your decisions with your values
Mhm.
is the mark of an authentic leader, especially when it's inconvenient and especially when nobody's looking. Principles first decision making and recognizing that some decisions will come with a cost if you want to be an authentic leader. Um, for me, it also means that everyone gets held to the same standards because for me, that's
Yeah.
core to equity and fairness. And when we start treating some people differently than others, uh, when we start having favorites, that's when unfairness and bias can come in. And those, bias has real impacts on people's lives and careers.
Yeah.
So consistency and fairness is really important. And then I would also say authenticity is the willingness to make a tough call and to not pass the problem down to somebody else, kind of being that bulwark for your team. And if there's a tough call to make an authentic leader should make that call and not pass the problem around.
Yeah.
Yes. And what about handling tough conversations? It sort of feels like you've spent quite a bit of time on this as a leader yourself in kind of coming up through your story and maybe being hesitant to be really clear in feedback and wanting to please and wanting
Mhm.
to be kind. What would you say about that?
I think for me, I I try to use empathy when I'm having a tough conversation and say, if the situation was reversed, how would I want to receive this feedback in a way that I could hear it, not get defensive, and actually use the feedback constructively? So I think about what I would like to hear, and then I adapt it to what I know about the person.
Mm.
I've I've experienced people who use fear and shame to give feedback, which ultimately isn't good for growth or development or psychological safety. So you can have tough conversations, but deliver it with empathy, deliver it in a way that the person can hear, and deliver it in a way that creates constructive behavior change and not fear and shame and disengagement.
And I love what you said about not just treating people how you want to be treated, but adapting it for what you know about them
Yeah.
and their
Yep.
own experience. That matters
Yep.
so much. And so, Jacob, how should authenticity scale as organizations grow?
I think as organizations grow, authenticity has to scale in systems. Values have to scale through systems. So at scale, authenticity is about how leaders feel on any given day. It's about designing organizational systems that align with values. And
Mm,
that's really what Amy and I did at Glassdoor is we took our values
mhm,
around fairness, around inclusion, around belonging, and we infused it at every step of that hire to retire employee journey.
mhm.
And hopefully, Amy, that has allowed our legacy to last beyond our time there
Yeah.
because it's baked into the culture now. It's baked
Yeah.
into systems, it's baked into process, and that makes it sustainable. It's not
Yeah.
dependent on you or I.
Yep.
It's built in.
Yeah.
And I think that is what great leaders do is they leave a legacy that is so deeply ingrained in in the systems of how an organization works that it lasts beyond them.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And it's hard work to do, right?
Yeah.
It's not a quick implementation to completely
Nope.
reroute a process, but it's so worthwhile and important. If it's important to you, you'll
Yep.
do the work. And so if we boil all of this down, we've been talking for a while here. What should leaders be asking themselves if they want to lead authentically and, they're not quite sure if they're hitting it? What should they be thinking about?
Do you know who you are? Have you
Mm,
done identity work?
mm,
Do you know what you stand for?
mm,
Do you know what principles, when if violated, would compromise who you are and
mm,
what's important to you?
Mm.
Have you cultivated the courage to make difficult decisions when it costs something?
yeah.
Have you actually done that? Your values aren't something you get credit for when you're a leader. They're something you get held to. So don't pursue authentic, principled leadership unless you're willing to live inside it on good days and bad ones.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because our last week's podcast episode, um, we did a theme on our values and how we
Mm,
came to have the values that we have as Stratovis, and we built our values first. That was the first thing we sat down and did and said,
mm,
what's really important to us? And that is exactly what we said last week is, these are the things that are non-negotiable for us. Like and the one we particularly talked about was the people first always. And the always is important because even when it's hard, even when everything is against you, um, do you still fight for what is right for, the population that you're trying to
yeah,
support or represent? And
yeah,
and yeah, that's just something we won't compromise on. And that shows up in a lot of different ways. It shows up with who we work with. It shows up with in how we treat the people that we partner with. Um, it's it's they're not negotiable. Like even when it's easier to do something else,
yeah,
or you're being directed to do something else, Your non-negotiables are really important. So it's funny that you phrased it like that because that was literally what we said last week.
I
Um,
love that you started with values, Amy. That says a
yeah.
lot about you and Erin.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
Well, I
it's
feel like you've left your mark.
yes,
I've been
true.
sort of reflecting on that through this conversation, and I think, I can, as I think back to our initial planning meeting, there are definitely themes, Jacob, of your perspective and philosophy
Mm.
in that discussion.
Oh no, I'm getting
100%.
called out for copying. Yeah, there definitely is. I learned so much in my time working for Jacob. It was honestly like it changed my whole career trajectory.
Mm.
I think I had just gonna a little sidebar here. I think I had decided that I had reached my top of where I could go. I
Mm.
don't know why, but I just had. I was like, okay, this is really good, and I'm having a good time, and I really like the work, and I love the people, and so this is good. And then Jacob just made me feel like, no, like you can go after whatever you want. Like you have the
Mm.
capability, you have the work ethic, you have the people skills, like the emotional intelligence to navigate through being in that position where you are managing up and managing down. Um, and it gave me the confidence to just keep going. And all the way, I got two promotions, and then now, we started our own company, and I wonder who I would have been had I not had that experience with you, Jacob. I wonder who I would have been. But thankfully, that didn't happen. I did get to work with you, and
Oof.
now I'm unstoppable.
I am definitely chopping onions or something. Wow. Thank you. I am, so proud of you, Amy. And, I had people who believed in me in my career, and I am so proud of you, and I'm happy to pay that forward to you. And I know that you have and will pay it forward to others. So keep it going.
You gotta. I love it. Oh, okay. Get back on track here. Um, so speaking of, people that have like influenced you, what do you wish that someone had told you like early in your career?
I That's a great question. I think, early in my career, I did a lot of apologizing
Mm,
for things that I didn't need to apologize for because it came from a place of people pleasing and being
mhm,
insecure and being uncertain of who I was.
mhm,
And I finally had a manager who was like, Jacob, stop apologizing. Don't say I'm sorry unless you've done something wrong. And it was just the perfectly timed piece of feedback at the right time when I was ready to receive it. And
mhm.
I stopped starting every email with sorry for this or sorry for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard habit to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is
Yeah. Instead of saying, sorry for my delayed response, say thank you for your patience.
yes.
Just a simple switch like that just made such a difference in my mindset, and I think helped me step into a bigger leadership role.
I like that.
And then the second thing I would say is I wish that I had this feedback earlier in my time at Glassdoor,
Mm,
which is like, yes, be inspiring and be visionary, but then follow through with like a solid operating model and build these things into systems. Or, I learned that eventually, but it took some trial and error and not a small amount of feedback from senior leaders in the organization. So I wish I would have learned that a little sooner.
That's funny. Um, and I guess I'm curious real quick, like who do you think struggles the most with authentic leadership and why do you think that is?
Um, I think particularly people who have been super high performers who
Mm-hmm.
are really executing on the what,
Mm,
and they get promoted into these leadership positions, but they haven't really done a lot of identity work.
mm,
And
Mhm.
that sometimes translates um, that sometimes translate poorly into leadership roles, where being a high performer does not necessarily mean you're going to be a great leader or manager.
Makes sense.
So people who have not done identity work and really dug deep within themselves to understand who they are.
Mhm.
And then, leaders rewarded for outcomes, but those who've never been held accountable for their behavior.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, there's always like at least one of those
Yep.
in talent acquisition particularly because it's so uh
Hmm.
it's like a little sales organization within HR, and
Mm.
it's very clear to see your results in the numbers, and it's quick turnaround too, right? Like um you've got this requisition and you've got to fill it in X amount of days, and you can look at the end of the month and see like who's where. And so yeah, I often think about that, like just because you are like the top performer and that you deliver work really well doesn't give you an excuse to make everyone around you miserable.
Yeah.
So
Didn't we used to say no brilliant jerks
yes, yes.
or no glass holes at
Yes,
Glassdoor?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I love that.
And so to kind of wrap us up on this piece, like if you could give one piece of practical advice that leaders could make, what would it be?
One piece of advice, um, talk less, listen more.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's really the core of it. Employees feeling seen and heard is the best medicine to cultivate authentic leadership and build trust.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
Well, we can't let you off the hook that easy, Jacob. I've got a couple more things that I'd love just to kind of rapid fire at you before we close. And so, first on my mind is what are you most proud of in how you lead today?
Hmm. I think I'm most proud of creating psychological safety and belonging for
Mm,
those who need it most.
mm,
I
That
am not
is,
not
yeah,
surprised to hear that one. It seems like it's a forte. I mean,
mm,
definitely in Amy's testimony, that was transformational in her career journey and in her growth.
yeah.
Can only imagine how many lives you've touched in that. That's amazing.
it was transformative for me when I had that experience, and I knew that that was the goal of my career was to create that for others.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, as we've been talking, there's so much thoughtfulness to how you've shaped your leadership. And so tell us kind of with a little bit of vulnerability, what are you still actively working on as a leader today?
It's a great question. I What comes to mind is something that I'm working on is what it means to stay in a space of change. And the world that we live in right now is so volatile and everything feels like it's changing so quickly.
yeah, yeah.
And you know, the f- the part of my job that I was so passionate about, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging,
Hmm.
has gone from something that is celebrated and invested in to something that is punished
Yeah,
almost. And that has been a hard thing to process because it's so core to my values and how I work.
yeah.
So I'm thinking, and of course, we talked about AI and the rapid changes that that's bringing. So what I'm working on is finding this space of agility and open-mindedness, um, accepting what's changed in the world and trying to figure out what my path forward looks like and how do I cultivate meaning in a world that feels like it's attacked what's most important to me?
Mm,
It's something that I'm working on.
it's a hard one.
Yeah.
And thank goodness you're spending the time there because I think that's something that so many of us, leaders and individual contributors alike, are stewing on
Yeah.
and trying to unravel. And so, having a great leader like you, doing the work, having the reflection, and then hopefully being able to lead others through that is a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
And so, I've gotten lost in our conversation. I've had so much fun, Jacob, hearing from you,
Me
and
too.
I'm sure that that our listeners also have enjoyed the conversation and are hopefully taking some learnings away. And so, where can listeners find you or follow you if they would like to get connected?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn. My handle is Jacob Little SF on LinkedIn. My Instagram handle is at Jacob Little. And if you type my name into Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I've done several of these, and you can hear my thoughts on other topics
Love it.
on podcasts.
Love it. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll wrap, but any final thoughts before we let you go?
Final thoughts: align yourself with a higher purpose or goal. Know what you stand for.
Mm,
Cultivate self awareness. What does it mean to be uniquely you and bring that person to work?
yeah.
And then listen to your people and show empathy.
Ugh,
To sum it up,
love it. Yeah, for the people that only had time to listen to it for 5 seconds, that's it. It's gold. It's gold. Thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on. It's been so great to hear you talk again. It's bringing back so many great memories, and just to hear like the journey that you've been on over the last few years has been really cool and insightful. Because you were that what did you call it? The little storm guard thing. You were
the
that for
bulwark.
that's it. You were that for me, and so it's interesting to hear the things that you were kind of like navigating on the other side. To me, you showed up like everything was great. Like, like there was no problems, and my team were doing
Love
just
that for
fine.
you.
Yeah,
uh,
I didn't feel a thing. Yeah, it was
that's great.
awesome. It was awesome. Do you have any fun plans this evening?
I'm gonna cook some dinner and then hang out with my boyfriend later. So
Oh, I
it'll
love
be,
it. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. Thank Amy, Erin, thank you so much for having me. I could not be more proud of you both and more excited about what you're building, and so glad I got to be a part of it.
Oh,
Thank you.
so much. Thanks. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Jacob.